my Toronto. VK on the beat. Check. I'm in Toronto where you wanna get the city love. I'm from Toronto where you wanna get the city love. I'm in Toronto like we wanna get the city love. My city love me back for my city love.
Welcome to episode 1114 of Toronto Mic'd, proudly brought to you by Great Lakes Brewery, a fiercely independent craft brewery who believes in supporting communities, good times, and brewing amazing beer. Order online for free local home delivery in the GTA. StickerU.com. Create custom stickers, labels, tattoos, and decals for your home and your business. Palma Pasta. Enjoy the taste of fresh, homemade Italian pasta and entrees from Palma Pasta in Mississauga and Oakville. Electronic Products Recycling Association. Committing to our planet's future means properly recycling our electronics of the past. Ridley Funeral Home, pillars of the community since 1921. And Canna Cabana, the lowest prices on cannabis. Guaranteed. Over 100 stores across the country. Learn more at cannacabana.com. Today, making his Toronto Mike debut, is Hal Harbour. Welcome to Toronto Mike, Hal Harbour, or would you prefer if I called you Doug Barron?
Well, I don't use Hal Harbour so much anymore, but yeah, I answer to either.
Oh, good. Then I'm going to call you Hal.
Yeah, it's good.
Sounds like a Paul Simon song. You can call me Hal.
It does, doesn't it? I was given that name by brother Jake Edwards when I was working at the rock station here, Q104. We were driving across the Halifax McDonald Bridge, and the station was just becoming on the air. And he said, "We got to come up with a name for you for the news guy in the morning." And Hal Harbour just kind of sprung out of somewhere, so we went with that.
Well,
and then, of course, Earl Jive used to call me Halibut Harbor, Halitosis Harbor. You know, he had the whole run.
Brother Jake Edwards, also an FOTM. Hal, you are now an FOTM, a friend of Toronto Mike. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Have you at all kept in touch with Bro Jake? Any contact of Bro Jake over the last, last decade or so?
Yeah, we communicate a couple times a year. He's out on the West Coast there, and he's I think he's retired now, playing golf and driving motorcycles and stuff. And we still reminisce about some of the old great days of fun radio that we had together.
So before we find out how you ended up on CFNY, let's find out if you knew, or maybe John Gallagher, because sort of famously on Toronto Mike, we learned that John Gallagher ended up on Q107 here in Toronto because he was playing softball with Brother Jake, who mentioned there was an opening and he should apply. And Brother Jake was on his way to Q107. But are you familiar with the John Gallagher?
Yes, John Gallagher just moved back to Halifax a little while ago. But here's the story. They actually offered me the sports guy's job.
Wow.
And I said, "Thanks a lot, but I'm not your guy. John Gallagher is your guy." He was knocking him dead on the morning show here at C100 in Halifax, and so he took it and went with it, and the rest is history.
I got to process this information. This is quite the mind blow. So you, Hal Harbour, you're the reason John Gallagher entered our lives here in Toronto.
That's right, Gary. I'm trying to think. Gary Slate was the big guy there at the Q. And he said, "Hal, you got to come down here and work with Jake." And I was like, "Love to, but like I said, John's your guy." And so John took it up, and yeah, he's quite the character. He's back here now, and he's been bugging me to get out and party and stuff with him.
Well, that man can party. That is,
you sure can.
I got to know him pretty well because Peter Gross and John Gallagher had a show called Gallagher and Gross Save the World that I was producing, and so John and Peter would end up in my basement for like extended periods of time as we recorded these. These are great episodes, by the way.
I bet.
Kind of the pandemic kind of killed that show because John was he didn't want to go anywhere. And next thing you know, he sold his Toronto home and ended up back home in Nova Scotia where you are.
Yeah.
But Yeah, quite a character in this city. I mean, he's kind of polarizing, I suppose, but I got a lot of time for John Gallagher.
Yeah, he's bigger than life, that's for sure. He's got that big booming voice, and if you look at his social media pages, he's got selfies with just about everybody.
He was the selfie man before we all had phones in our pockets.
Exactly, yeah, he was.
Okay, so here's how we're gonna do this, Hal. I got to get you to CFNY, but I want to understand who the hell were you before you moved to Toronto to be on our airwaves? Give me a little background.
Yeah, I'll give you a brief history. I went to Humber College radio broadcasting. I graduated in 72 or something like that. Moved to Simcoe, Ontario, worked there for a spell, then moved back to Toronto, worked a little bit in advertising, and did some overnight stuff at the country station up in Richmond Hill. I can't recall the call letters. And then I moved back to Halifax and worked, at CJCH, C100. And it kind of dried up. Things kind of dried up for me here. So I moved back to Toronto and bugged Don Burns to give me a break. Let me in the door. That's all I need. And so he found a weekend spot for me and a spot doing a little bit of writing on his music history thing. And once I got my foot in the door there, then I was away.
What year was it when you arrived here and showed up on 102.1 CFNY?
Well, I'm not good on years, but I think it's 1988. That's the year I came down, and Liz Janik was just being appointed the Canadian talent director or whatever as such, and was there from 88 to 92.
Okay, now, as you can imagine, I have some questions. But first, I got a couple of comments for you when I tweeted that Hal Harbour was finally making his Toronto Mike debut. The first, well, a couple, but the first one's from Danny Elwell.
Okay, yeah, Danny. Yeah.
I know you know Danny well, but she tweets, yes, lots of S's in that yes, by the way, and even exclamation marks. I think of at least 3 of them. And she writes, wonderful human being. So maybe right off the top here, tell me about what your relationship with Danny then and now.
Well, we had I was doing live in Toronto at 6 o'clock, which was the live music show. We talked about what was going on in the clubs and played interviews, had guests. And then Danny and I would make that transition into her evening show. So we always had this fun little turnover, carrying on and joking and such. And eventually I had a band too called Funky Bummer, and I used Danny to do some vocal work in that. It was kind of a trip-hoppy thing, and she did some poetry with that on that. And we've just remained good friends over the years. She just was down here this summer with her husband, and I took them around. We had a little fun.
And I saw the photos. Firstly, that was amazing to see you and Danny together. There's another gentleman. Sorry, not that Danny's a gentleman, but there is a gentleman. Yeah, there's another gentleman. Scott Turner. Here's the comment from Scott Turner. First of all, he says hi. So hi, Hal.
Hi, Scott.
Your voice reminds me of Scott's, by the way. Like I chat with Scott often, and you have a very similar timbre to your voice than Scott Turner.
Yeah, that's interesting. Never heard that before.
Just an observation. But here's what Scott writes. Still have that old station wagon, or what was it? The Halmobile. Not sure why I remember that. What's Scott talking about?
It was probably one of my old Volvo, or I had a Peugeot at one time too, which was pretty vintage, and it took me around to various events that we took part in at CFNY. That's probably what he's referring to.
So to kind of whet our appetite, I have a few clips of you on CFNY. So I'll kind of liberally sprinkle them throughout our 102.1 discussion here. But let me get the first one going here, just to hear a bit of Hal Harbour on CFNY.
From Don Burns' afternoon drive, we shift gears and go straight to Live in Toronto, an hour-long look at Toronto's club and concert scene. The program is hosted by Hal Harbour and is followed at 8 p.m. by Danny Elwell.
Live in Toronto from CFNY, FM 102.
How you doing? Welcome to the Thursday edition of Live in Toronto. We are going to review some of the concert announcements we made last night in case you missed it. We'll also take a look ahead at the Rockabilly weekend we are presenting this weekend at Harbourfront. Off the top here, we have a cancellation. The Box will not be performing tonight at the Diamond Club. They've canceled. Apparently, they're going to be doing some dates with Sinead O'Connor. The Box not performing at the Diamond tonight, but the Saddle Tramps will be there, along with the Paul Myers Band. We'll start the show off tonight with the Saddle Tramps, live in Toronto.
Saddle Tramps. Okay, so are you the original host of Live in Toronto?
No, I'm not, and I'm trying to think of who preceded me on that show. I can't remember who was doing it before me, but what a delightful show to do. That there was so much music going on at that time, and just to meet and bring people into the studio and interview bands and dig up new music from some of the Canadian indie bands was just fantastic.
Even listening to that clip. So that's actually, I got to shout out Brother Bill, and we're gonna talk about a bunch of personalities you came across. But Brother Bill, at some point he digitized this scope. I think it's from 1990, but that's what you heard there, like the CFNY scope. And I shared it on the Toronto Mic feed. So if anybody, you can actually hear the entire thing. It starts with like Humble and Fred, and then there's Deadly Headley, and I think Chris Shepard's in there. But I mean, it's just listening to that, like it kind of sets it up. So you had Don Burns, and and the Duffer.
Yeah, he did the afternoon thing with Burns for a while there, the Duffer.
And then yourself, Live in Toronto. And then, like you said, Danny Elwell after you.
Yeah, the alternative bedtime hour was her late night thing, which was pretty fun.
Absolutely. And even
to sleep in a good way.
Oh, no. I mean, Danny's been on, and I told her that was amazing. Okay, so many questions. Oh, my goodness, overload here. But even that little clip I played, it mentions the Paul Myers Band, another FOTM. But I didn't even know, like, he had a band post Gravelberries. I guess is that post Gravelberries, pre Gravelberries? Anyways, he's Mike Myers' brother. So there's
I don't know if that was post or it's a good question. We'll have to look at that.
I wasn't aware of the Paul Myers Band, but why not? And I love the shout outs to the Diamond. Of course, it hasn't been the Diamond in a while, but very cool. Okay, so where will I begin? Let's talk of Don Burns. Talk about Don Burns off the top. So sounds like Don is the reason you got the gig at CFNY. And he's no longer with us, and sadly, I'll never get to have him on Toronto Mic. Gone far too soon. But what can you say to us about the late great Don Burns?
He was an enigma for sure, and it was. I just had this obsession with, if I'm coming to Toronto, I want to work at CFNY. So I started. Marsden was still there. David Marsden was still there, just about to leave, and I kept calling him every 2 weeks, and finally he said, talk to Don Burns, because Don was the new guy. So I pulled over into a payphone somewhere near the 401 and called up Don, and he said, look, I can offer you weekends and a writing gig, writing for my music history thing. And so the day I went in to meet with him, I went into his office, and he was sitting there, and he put his feet up on the desk, and he had these giant furry moose slippers on. And I'm like, this is the guy for me, What a character. And he just, he was great. He just, he'd been through a lot of different radio experiences and brought all that crazy energy to CFNY, and knew how to pick talent and let talent take it their own way. You know what I mean? He didn't step on people.
And he was like the imaging voice for before that, right? I mean, his voice, I have all these old CFNY promos and ads, and he's all over the place with his voice.
And I think he was doing was it the history or sports or something? Yeah, he had a regular gig. Great set of pipes. Energy. And then he really got into dance music in a big way when that storm rolled through Ontario, the trance thing and everything.
Yeah, the raves. I mean, it's funny that I read that clip, that note from Scott Turner, because he was at Energy 108 during this rave era. Like, he was the guy there. So it all comes full circle. And I think DJ, I think he was DJ Trance, I think was.
That's right, he was. Yeah, with that big giant Dr. Funny hat that he used to wear.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, who do I pick on next? I want to talk about everybody that you encountered at CFNY, but let's talk now about Liz Janik. Future FOTM, we've discussed this. She did appear on episode 1021. We had Liz Janik. And while we're talking about Liz, at the time Liz was on Toronto Mic, her husband, Peter Goodwin, who you knew well, was very, very sick. He was very ill. And he has subsequently passed away. So rest in peace, Peter Goodwin. But what can you say about Liz Janik and Peter Goodwin?
Well, I think the thing for me was I was always into like what, you know, and I appreciate the fact that radio stations play music from away from the West Coast of the States or England or whatever, but I could never quite get my hand on why we didn't play more local music. And that's what Liz and championed, was local new music. And so I think when she left, I kind of inherited that position at CFNY. I became the director of Canadian talent development, if that's not too redundant. And it was my job to, like, a stack of cassettes came in every morning, listen to them. It was great because I lived in western part of Toronto, and I drove in my Volvo to the station, and I got a chance to just like pop in cassettes and listen to that, and I'd be like, that's the song. You know what I mean? It was great.
Well, do you have memories of any particular band or song that you brought to the airwaves and sort of helped break that we might be familiar with?
Well, I guess, I mean, the biggest one is, of course, the Bare Naked Ladies. I got their first cassette, and Yoko Ono and all those tunes jumped out at me. Or If I Had $1 Million, you know, it's like, this is too cool. It's fun, and people are going to get. And I played it for Jive, Live Earl Jive, and he was a music director at the point. He heard it too. He knew it was going to be huge, and we put it into heavy rotation. Phones went nuts. We got a chance to give them $100,000 to do what they could with it, and it was, you know, it was a great era for breaking new music, and they had all the charisma and the charm and everything to take it all the way.
Well, I was listening to you and your station at the time the Yellow Tape came out, and I mean, my memories are all those jams in high rotation, including the cover of McDonald's Girl.
Yeah, that's right. We got that from a live show. I had a chance to commission the CFNY 24-track mobile unit every week. Go down to the Riverly and do the Rheostatics. Go here and do the Saddle Tramps. And we got that track, that live McDonald's Girl track, which I don't think they ever put out on a record.
No, never. I mean, they didn't write that song, but
no, it's not theirs. But
no, it never did. No, because when I've had a few members of that band on, and you have to go to YouTube and find like a potato quality like recording of it off of your 102.1, and absolutely no official release of McDonald's Girl, which is too bad.
It's a perfect song for them. It sounds like it could be their song, you know, just their sensibilities.
So that's a big one, Hal. I don't want to advance too quickly, but that is, like, let's face it, that band had a #1 song on the Billboard Hot 100. That there's not a lot of. Although now I was going to say there's not a lot of Canadian bands that can make that claim, but in the era of streaming, with Drake and Weeknd and Shawn Mendes and Justin Bieber, there actually are a lot of Canadians topping that chart. But prior to streaming, it was super rare to get a Canadian artist that topping the chart that wasn't like a Celine Dion or Shania Twain or whatever.
But we used to. I mean, we played the early Tragically Hip records, stuff like that. They would call me. Their manager would call me weekly. Head with Brendan Canning, and went on with Broken Social Scene. They used to call me I became friends with these people because they call me all the time to urge me to play their records. And of course, and then the Saddle Tramps was Sarah Harmer. Wasn't she the lead?
Well, that was Weeping Tile, wasn't it?
Maybe.
Okay, I think Sarah Harmer's Weeping Tile, but yeah, but like I absolutely love talking about this time in music and all these artists that were you were shining a light on. Did you have anything to do with, the frequency we heard songs from Shakespeare My Butt?
Shakespeare My Butt. Well, we'd play them when the thing is, if you were gigging, then you got a good shot at getting a spin on Live in Toronto or on the weekend show. That was kind of the way to do it.
Now, that manager who's calling you every week for the Tragically Hip, that's Jake Gold, right?
Jake. Yeah, that's right.
Shout out to FOTM Jake Gold. And okay, so I'm trying to remember. I don't remember, and you'll correct me because you were there, but I don't remember CFNY playing any songs prior to the Up to Here album. But did CFNY play anything from that first EP, the last American, whatever it was called? I can't remember what it's called. But the EP before Up to Here, you played?
Yes, it was an EP. Yeah, we did. Yeah, that's the kind of the thing that broke it. Yeah, amazing. I remember having that on my my desk looking at it and giving it a spin. Yeah.
So I'm wearing this T-shirt today because this is Steve Fall's label, and Steve Fall's with Acid Test.
There you go. My old buddy Steve Fall, and he's got his new project now called On.
Right.
And they're going hard. They're going to, they got it back together, and power trio.
Right. He's a fellow Nova Scotia guy, and he remembers Mr. Skin. I guess you were the advocate for Mr. Skin getting that on the air at CFNY.
Yes, that's right. He played the corpse in that first movie. Did you ever know that?
Okay. I didn't know maybe I did and I forgot maybe, but
yeah. But yeah, Mr.
Highway
Skin,
61? Is that
yes. It? Yeah, that's right. If you see the beginning of that movie, there's a corpse, and that's Steve.
Hey.
Yeah, no, he's a hustler. He's moving, and he's always got something on the go. He was back here for quite a while, and teaching guitar, and he probably still does. But then he moved back and got back with Lucy, and they resumed.
You're out. You got it exactly right. You got it. And he's a sweetheart. But him and Lucy, their one big issue is that they're sort of diehard Leafs fans. And I mean, I myself root for the Leafs, but I'm a realist where every year there's going to be a parade down Bay Street with those two. So
yeah. No, they seem to be doing pretty well. They've got a real crunchy sound, and Lucy's a great front person in that band.
Did you know? Absolutely. Did you know Peter Goodwin well, or did you?
I didn't know Peter that well. It was kind of a transition point when him and Liz were working on the show, and then they left, and then I kind of fell into that position. So, but I did certainly work with him for probably half a year or something. Yeah.
Now, shout out to Ridley Funeral Home, but I'm going to ask you about some people who are no longer with us. We've lost recently. What can you tell me about James Baby Scott?
I didn't know James very well, actually. Yeah, it was a transition again. He was probably just on the way out when I came in. Yeah, but I heard great things about him. People loved him. People talked about him all the time.
Well, then maybe you're right. Yeah, because you're 88. You're right. Maybe I'm off a few years here. Yeah. But did you overlap at all with Brad McNally?
Nope.
No.
Nope, didn't.
Okay.
Work with Brad.
Let's do it this way. Let's see how good your memory is. And you knew you were coming on, so I'm thinking you might have gone back to the notes or something. But can you name check who was on the air when you arrived at CFNY?
Well, Live Real Jive was certainly on there. Shep was on there on Saturday nights. I'm trying to think of who was doing the morning show, because there was a stage where, Humble was there for a while with
Fred Patterson.
Humble and Fred, and Dan Duran.
Right.
And then Steve Anthony did mornings for a while too, which was crazy.
Right. Before
he was still doing much music as well too. So he was doing both gigs and just running it to, burning the candle at both ends. He'd nap on the floor underneath the control board after his shift, before he headed home, because he was so out of touch. And I'm trying to think of who was doing the afternoon show. Probably Duff, maybe, and Don. Yeah,
the Duffer and Don Burns were afternoons. And I know Alan Cross was at the station.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And it's so funny because almost the first week I was there, and I was supposed to do weekends, it was like, the afternoon show's open and we're doing a live show at the Hard Rock Cafe. We need you to host. And so I was thrown right into this live broadcast at the Hard Rock Cafe on Yonge Street. And it was like, okay, Jane Siberry's coming in now. Now you're going to interview Blue Rodeo, and next you're going to talk to, and I was like thrown into all these terrific music personalities. So I kind of was trial by fire. It was great fun.
Sounds amazing. And May Potts was there.
And May, yes, of course, May Potts. Yeah, my memory's really bad, but
it's okay.
I remember the first party I went to when I first got there, and I was all these lovely women, May and Danny, and everybody was so friendly and welcoming. It was great, because at first you're kind of a little intimidated, but everybody was so supportive and great.
No, good to hear. Good to hear. Now, just this past week, it was a busy week here on Toronto Mike, but a couple of people who paid a visit here to the studio were Dave Bedini from the Rio Statics and Stephen Stanley, who was from Lowest of the Low and now the Stephen Stanley Band. But what those two have in common is that they were very close with Dave Bookman.
Yeah.
Now, what I'm hoping I can get from you, and I think this, because I know Bedini would be, helped Bookie get his first radio gig at CIUT.
Mm-hmm.
But how do you play a role in Bookie transitioning from, CIUT to being heard on the air at CFNY?
Yeah, I think we worked together on the Live in Toronto thing because he just had so much insight, and he had such a great way of talking about the music that we just used him more and more and more. And then after I left, he really went on to the bigger and great things. And Bedini, I'm a big fan of Dave Bedini too, not only for his music but just his general, intelligence and journalistic abilities and sensibilities about all kinds of things. So yeah, I think. And it happened to me here in Halifax too. I found another guy too named Les Ismore, who was just a character, and he was just so brilliant on the air. We just brought him forward because he was a natural, and Dave Bookman was a natural. So yeah,
I guess we'd call
that. Didn't the Lowest of the Low just do some kind of a documentary? They're working on a film. Lately.
Yeah. Ron Hawkins was here too with Stephen Stanley, and they mentioned it, but it's not available yet. But yes, there is a Lowest of the Low documentary coming. Absolutely. Are you in that doc by any chance?
So they asked me to contribute a little bit. I just did some text. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Now, Bookie. So just to be clear, because I think there's been a lot of Bookie talk. They just dedicated a plaque to him outside the Horseshoe Tavern. And,
did they?
Yeah, very recently. And Stephen Stanley and Dave Bedini were there, amongst other friends of Bookie. But Bookie, of course, just before he passed away, again, far too soon, like some others we've talked about, but Bookie was at Indy 88. And he was at Indy 88 because Alan Cross recommended Indy 88 pick him up because he was no longer at CFNY, where he had been for so long. And just to connect all the dots, he basically ends up as the street reporter for Live in Toronto because, like you said, he had the content and you'd put him on the air. But prior to that, it was CIUT. And I just think it's interesting to connect all these dots. So the Bookie that we know and love, really, you helped shine a light on him by putting him on your show Live in Toronto on CFNY. Yeah,
when you hear somebody that's got it, it's great that the management will let you do it too. Let's work with this person, Yeah, some people just have it. He had it. He knew what he was talking about. He was on the street. He was in the clubs. And he had the gift of gab too.
Huh. I like to share I call it retro Blue Jays music. I don't know what else to call it, but these compilation CDs that were for the Variety Village charity. And, there'd be Toronto radio personalities would be singing Blue Jay songs in the early 90s. And this was very common, as you know. So one of them that I've shared is Humble Howard Glassman singing, let me get the Jays to the Top, okay? Jays to the Top. So Captain Phil writes me that Humble did that song. 'Cause I couldn't remember, whether he did that at CFNY or if he had done it during that period he's at the Mix 99.9, because Humble leaves and comes back basically in an 18-month span or whatever. But Humble did Jays at the Top. This is according to Captain Phil. We can say hello to Captain Phil right now.
Captain Phil, what a great guy. He's out west too.
He's a good guy, good FOTM. Okay, so Humble did Jays to the Top at CFNY, not the Mix. I know because I sang on the chorus with Hal Harbour. So apparently, we're going to get into some of your music in a moment, but your vocals can be heard on Jays to the Top. Fun fact.
That's news to me. I don't remember
Okay. I never questioned Phil because he's got a great memory and he seemed to be taking notes along the way. So
cool.
Is it possible?
Oh, it's possible for sure, because we did a lot of music in the studio, just sort of cut and paste stuff, late night stuff. And one of the ones we did was Wild Wild West, about the CNE, and Oh, there was a an Earl Jive tune, a bunch of stuff. I should send. I'll send them to you.
Send them because
And
I'll
you can future
release them
reference.
into the wild for the
Yeah,
CFNY
okay.
fans out there. All right, I said I had a few clips of you on CFNY, so here's another Hal Harbour on CFNY.
There's the Saddle Tramps live in Toronto. They're performing at the Diamond Club, not with the Box. The Box have opted to open for Sinead O'Connor, and so it'll be the Saddle Tramps tonight at the Diamond, along with the Paul Myers Band. Also tonight, the C&E, it's Ronnie James Dio with guests Ingy Malmsteen. Junior Gone Wild is in town for the weekend at Alberts Hall. At the Black Swan, the Kendall Wall Blues Band tonight. The Abrasives do the Cabana, the Nancy Sinatras at the Cameron. And at Clinton's tonight, a show with Scott B. Sympathy and the Boneheads. And here's a track direct from cassette from the Boneheads. Their release is called Sex, and this is My Baby Cried in Toronto here.
My baby cried all night long.
A little more of you on that day at CFNY.
Yeah. Oh yeah, there was so much going. Like it was just it was an easy show to do because there was so much coming up and going on. It was great.
You know, I was working at the CNE that day. That I can tell when this is recorded because I was working at the X when Ronnie James Dio was playing at the X. I was working at a game booth, and I remember you could tell the Dio fans when they were coming before and after the concert, like they had a distinct look to them. And
Yeah.
And I know I mispronounce every second word. That's why I was never a professional broadcaster, although some say I might be one now. But how the heck did that happen? But basically, I think it's Yngwie Malmsteen. Like
Probably is. Yeah, I'm really bad at that stuff.
Well, you didn't have YouTube to go confirm things before you.
That's right. Just let it roll off quickly and hope nobody was paying attention.
All right, let's burn this third clip of you. This is the third clip, and then we'll find out why it ends for you at CFNY. Here's Hal Harbour, CFNY.
There's the Boneheads. Yeah. Live in Toronto, My Baby Cried, the Boneheads with Scott B. Sympathy at Clinton's tonight. Some concert announcements that we made last night on the program. We should tell you about again in case you missed them. CFNY presents Adamski at Lee's Palace, Tuesday, September the 18th. Tickets are $10 at Ticketmaster, Peddler, Vortex, and the Club, and they go on sale today. We present the Sundays at the Diamond Wednesday, September 19th. Tickets are $11 for the Sundays, plus service charge, and they are available at Ticketmaster, the Peddler, Vortex, and the Club. That's the Diamond. They're on sale today. We also present an evening with Robert Fripp in the League of Crafty Guitarists, Wednesday, October 3rd at the Minkler Auditorium. That's at Seneca College. Tickets $23 reserved, plus service charge. Available at all Ticketmaster outlets. They're on sale today. We also present Marion Faithful, Saturday, October 13th. Convocation Hall, U of T, tickets $23, available at all Ticketmaster outlets, and these are available today as well. This is Live in Toronto. Coming up, some rockabilly.
What a different time in Toronto radio. Like the fact that, okay, here's some rockabilly. You know what I mean? Like it's like, what were the rules? I know in the Marsden era, like Marsden's been on this show many times, and basically he let the DJs play what they want within these like parameters. I can't remember. They had a system, like there had to be a certain CanCon and certainly, but pretty much you could pick an album off the shelf and play like a cut, whatever. But what were the rules like in your era of CFY, which is a little post Marsden?
When I first got there, we were still picking our own records. We had albums, and you could just go in and just pick your show. You knew what time of day it was, and at night, Saturday night, you'd want to be playing something a little more upbeat or danceable or whatever. But with Live in Toronto, there was nothing. It was wide open. Like you could play the Razorbacks and then go to Depeche Mode or whatever. You could go all over the place if you were supporting a show or talking about something that was coming up. So it was great. That was the beauty of that show. Yeah. And even on the weekends, we would do requests. And I loved, putting on a long track and then pre-recording the interview and then mixing it with the track when the time came. So it sounded like I had the record right in my hand. You know that one? Hi, can I hear this? You got it. Boom, there's the track. And, well, how do you do that? It's pre-tape.
Smoke and mirrors. You're
Yeah. I'm a producer, so I love sound effects. I mean, I was sampling just stuff off CDs and playing them during dance tracks or whatever, back before we had samplers or
Right.
digital punch out. You know what I mean? So that was a great fun, and people really, you could tell people got off on that stuff.
All right, let me tell you a little story, Hal. Okay, this is, again, I never worked in radio, so I'm not from radio, so I would just listen to radio. And I still remember, I think we're going back now 15 years, but Humble Howard, who I produced the Humble and Fred show today, so I'm still close with these guys, but Humble Howard was on Easy Rock. Okay, this is post Humble and Fred, before the podcast. He was on Easy Rock with Colleen Rushholm.
Okay.
And I was in there and like to see how the sausage gets made, because I had never really been in a studio or whatever. And I remember they said, okay, like I'm trying to remember now. Caller 90. What is the call letters for? It's boom 97. Okay, caller 97 wins something. Okay, yeah. And then he picks up the phone and he's like, "Sorry, your caller 1 or something." And he picks it up again and he goes, "Sorry, your caller 15." And then he picks it up the third time and he says, "Congratulations, you're caller 97. Okay? Like, I'm witnessing this. And I remember thinking, wow, like, how gullible was I as a kid? Like, you're hearing all this and you're just like buying it. And how much of that is smoke and mirrors?
It is so much of it. That's the beauty of radio. It's all smoke and mirrors. Yeah, we used to do that, but actually count them down to higher 1, higher 2, higher 3, you know, and then finally get to
and
20.
And then the fourth call was, "Hi, you're caller 102.
Yeah, exactly.
And then I remember thinking, like, I should have thought, like, I was so naive that, like, how quickly you got 102 calls or whatever. Like, I should have, like, had this, like, there's probably not 102 people who are going to call in if you gave them, like, a week or whatever. Like, I should have used some common sense.
Yeah.
But.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's all, I used to, when I was in radio broadcasting at Humber, I would sit in my bed at night and listen to David Marsden reaching into his brown paper bag and mixing all this music and fire sign theater comedy bits and just take you someplace, take you away.
Okay, so I'm a little mildly confused about one thing. So you're a Maritimer by birth, right? Born and raised in the Maritimes.
No,
okay.
I was born in Kitchener-Waterloo, and I worked in Southern Ontario radio for a spell. Then I moved down here in '76 to work at the Chum Group station, CJCH, which was like the top 40 #1 station.
It's all crystallizing for me now. And this is why you targeted, essentially. And Alan Cross did the same thing in Manitoba, apparently. Like, he wanted to work for this station, which was CFNY.
Yeah.
So you were a fan of CFNY, the spirit of radio.
Fan, yeah. I actually worked a spell at Chick, which was the AM station just down the road. I did a morning show there for like 4 months before, you know, they were a little wacko there and they moved on to somebody else, but he hired me as the morning guy.
Yeah.
And
so that's Fred Patterson was there.
No, I don't think Fred was there at that time. Like I say, I was only there for like
Chick.
4 months. The Allen brothers, I think, ran it at that time, and they were.
Okay, so everyone listening who wants the full, this is quite a gory story actually, but you want, because there's jail involved, all this very exciting story.
Well, yeah, later days, yeah. When I started there, I mean, he brought me into the studio to watch the morning show guy, I don't recall who it was, do the show, and I could tell he was looking over his shoulder going, what's going on here? There's another guy sitting watching me do this show. And the next day, can you start tomorrow? And then I went, I'm going on holidays for a week down to see my folks and whatever. I'll come back. Well, we've decided to let you go. Oh, thanks a lot.
Wow. Okay. So this story is told in great gory detail in episode 1021. So if anyone here is like, oh, I want to hear more of this CFNY, we cover it from like day one to modern day. We even had the at the time the current morning show host on what is now the 102.1 The Edge, but it's all there in 102.1. Well, sorry, episode 1021, which is 10/20/21. So
Great.
let me ignore that. So I was almost going to call you Doug, but I'm going to try to call you Hal this entire episode. Okay. So the overall, when you look back at working for CFNY, what was your overall like? Were you happy with the experience? Was it a little underwhelming considering how big a fan you were? They say never meet your heroes, but what was it like working at CFNY?
Oh no, I mean it was terrific because I got to work with all these great personalities, the Live Earl Jive and Shep. I mean, we had Martin Short. We did the Video Road Show going out.
Oh, you mean Martin Streak?
Martin Streak. I'm sorry, did I say Short? Martin Streak.
That's all right.
And doing all that, and then being involved in the Casby Music Awards too. I mean, we had license to just party and bring in all these great bands. I remember we hired the Rheostatics as the house band. We got Stompin' Tom to come out of his sort of retirement, and
Wow.
yeah, it was just great because I mean, the station had this obligation to financially support Canadian content, so that we had a budget to do all this crazy stuff. And then when I came back to the Maritimes, and Sloan was just 18 years old, and we played took their record back and played it, and it took off. All that stuff was just it was extraordinary. I mean, really, it was just on a daily basis. It was, and then Rainer Schwartz. I was a super big fan of Reiner's from his days in FM radio, and to finally work with him, and actually we played music together as well too in a band called Funky Bummer. And so yeah, every day was an adventure. It was great fun, just great fun. Couldn't get there early enough in the morning to the station to start another adventure with those people.
Now, because you said Casby, that's a Canadian artist selected by you, but of course prior to that they were known as the Unos.
Yeah, the Unos, that's right.
So this is before you're at CFNY, but maybe this isn't the era when you're listening to CFNY, but I'm going to play this because I don't know when else I can drop this, but I got a great bit here from 84. So let's just listen to this promo for the 1984 Unos.
Ladies and gentlemen, we proudly present the CFNY FM Uno Awards 82. Tonight, Long John Baldry, Martha Johnson, Carol Pope and Kevin Staples, The Spoons, Bibi Gabor, Bruce Coburn, Mick Karn of Japan. Ladies and gentlemen, we proudly present the CFNY FM Uno Awards 83. Peter Goddard, Jonathan Gross, Ivan from Men Without Hats, Murray McLaughlin, Carol Pope and Kevin Staples, Robert Priest, Vladimir Rogov, The Spoons, The Tenants, and of course, Len Ulovich, all appearing at the Uno Awards.
Monday, April 2nd, Royal York Hotel. CFNY FM presents the Uno Awards 84, the listener's choice, a night with the stars.
In honor of the Canadian music industry.
Uno Awards 84.
Register your votes now. You'll find the ballot every Thursday in Now magazine.
Uno Awards 84.
Tickets go on sale March 1st at all Bass outlets. A night with the stars.
The listener's choice.
The Uno Awards 84, April 2nd at the Royal York Hotel. A presentation of CFNY FM 102, The Spirit.
There you go. Little flashback for you.
Yeah, I mean, it just goes to show the amount of names, musicians and bands in there that were recognized by CFNY, and a lot of those bands didn't get airplay anywhere else. We broke a lot of music.
Why does it end for you at CFNY?
I guess it was the old story of management change. The new management's crew came in and said, we no longer require your services. And I remember driving. It was one of those days where I was like, oh, great, I don't have a job. And I went out to my old Peugeot, which was parked out in front of the strip mall there in Brampton. And one of the big signs over my car had shorted and melted plastic down onto my car. And I'm like, nice. And so I started driving back into town, and the engine block cracked, and all this water got into and I was driving down the highway in this big black billow of smoke, and my car was disintegrating. And I'm like, I don't care. I'm not stopping. I'm going to get home. And then I got home and it's like, it's my wife, I don't have a job. The car is destroyed. And then within a week, they called me back and said, well, could you do weekends? We don't have a weekend guy. So, they brought me back for a few months on contract or whatever, while they figured out that they didn't have enough people. They had to let too many people go.
Is that the same wave of, that took Scott Turner off the air at CFNY?
I think so. Yeah.
And is that before or after Danny Elwell quits on the air?
It's probably, I don't know if it's before or after, but it's in that general time frame.
Yeah, a lot of
because
sorry,
they were coming down on us for playing what we wanted, and then it became modern music as well, too, like CFNY modern rock, I think, or modern music.
Right.
And it was a whole different vibe in there. So a lot of us who who just can't work unless you're happy, had to leave.
Well, happiness is everything. As I look back at my almost 5
Sure it
decades
is.
of life,
And it's tough. Yeah. I mean, people do it all the time. They put their head down and do the job, but it's sometimes
right.
radio people are very, it's their life. And if they're not doing what they think represents where their head's at, then, sorry, got to go.
I'm going to read a comment from a gentleman named Javid Jaffrey. This will kind of segue us into the next chapter here. But he writes, I remember driving up to the cottage in the early 90s and hearing a cover his group did of the Beach Boys' Do It Again on CFNY. Must have been just a demo, as I've never heard or found it again. But a nice cover that I wish I could hear again. Do we know what Javid's referring to here?
No. The Steely Dan tune, Do It Again? No.
Beach Boys, Do It Again.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh. So, okay. So this is not you.
Okay.
Is it possible it's you?
It is possible because I had that Beach Boy record they put out that was just instrumentals, and I probably did a send up on that.
So let's talk about you and music here. You've alluded a couple of times to, what do you call them? The Funky Drummers? What was the name?
Funky Bummer,
Okay.
Guru Workshop. Yeah, I had a band with Steven Outfit, who I met doing music with Bruce Murphy. We had a group called the Stunt Chimps for Burgess Meredith. And we were like high tech, and we actually opened for Digital Poodle and MC 900 Foot Jesus at the Rivoli, and it got a great crowd. And we had a song called Claves, which was a pretty.
Well, here, let's hear a bit of that, and then we'll talk more about Stunt Chimps, because I've been getting comments about another Stunt Chimps song as well that people remember. So let's hear a bit of this, and then we'll get back to it.
And I'd love to hear the song Claves by the Stunt Chimps. I love it.
Pretty techno. Yeah, that's my friend Dr. Bruce Murphy is the guy who put together most of that sound.
Okay,
I did a little bit of vocal and lyrics and stuff and some samples.
Okay,
but I met Dr. Bruce Murphy in Halifax. He was in a group called Steps Around the House. I was working at Q104 here in Halifax, and they were one of our bands that we featured on an indie album. And then we got along famously and started doing music together. And then when I moved to Toronto, we hooked up there. He was technically a dentist. He had a dental office on the top floor of the Much Music building, and he was a dentist to the stars during the day, and had all the toys. And he had his room with all his dental stuff, and then he had a room with all his samplers and keyboards and stuff. So we go up there late at night and compose this stuff. Yeah, it's very fun.
That's a mind blow there in itself. Like, are we talking 99 Queen Street East?
Yes, yeah, the big building. Yeah, wow. Up on the top there. So he would. There were several Much Music personalities that went to him for dental work.
Okay.
Yeah, we had some great parties up there too.
Okay, so since this will be like the definitive deep dive into Stunt Chimps, and I did receive notes here. So,
wow.
A couple of people remember hearing the song on the radio. They remember hearing She Wild.
She Wild, yeah. And that was a tune that, Bruce was always into sound. He would spend hours just coming up with MIDI sounds for drums and for and for keys and whatever. And so he just flopped a CD into the CD player and put it on spin, so it kind of jerked and kept starting and stopping. And wow, I love that sound. That became She Wild. And then I wrote the lyrics and we recorded it at his home studio. Yeah.
Wow. And it kind of sounds like, as I hear it in the headphones now, it would fit right alongside like a Mr. Skin or something from Acid Test.
Yeah.
Like,
they were, they had a great sampled kind of techno, or, just a modern sound for the time with utilizing voice samples and MIDI sound, as well as like great live guitars and vocals and whatever. Yeah.
And this is you on vocals?
On claves, that's Bruce singing on that one. I sang on She Wild.
Okay. It's funny hearing the vocals on this claves here. Sounds like it could be Chris Shepherd.
Now, there's a song that I did. I got to send you to. I did a song with a sample of Shep talking to the lead singer in the Cult,
Ian Ashbury.
Ian. They were.
Oh yeah, they were buds.
Back and forth.
Yeah,
they were good buds.
Yeah.
So I put together a sample track of that. I'll send you that. That's fun too, Shep.
So She Wild sounds like She Wild's the one people seem to remember the most. I mean, based on my very small sample size of like, hey, Hal Harbour's coming on.
Make me shake my bucket. Cliffside individuals in moonlit saran wrap. Jumbo chicken pot pie, all green legs akimbo. So royal on my couch or in my station wagon.
You're listening to Hal Harbour on CFNY. This song is She Wild, and it is by Hal's band there, the Stunt Chimps for Burgess Meredith. That's the full name, Stunt Chimps for Burgess Meredith. Quite a name. I'd shorten it to Stunt Chimps, but who the heck am I? This conversation is only possible because of great people like the good people at Great Lakes Brewery, fresh craft beer brewed right here in southern Etobicoke. Unfortunately, Hal can't get any in Halifax, but if you're in Ontario right now, you can get Great Lakes beer at the LCBOs, and if you're in the GTA, you can go to Great Lakes Beer and get free delivery straight from the retail store here in southern Etobicoke. Speaking of great websites for quality food and drink, go to palmapasta.com. There's 4 locations of Palma Pasta in Oakville and Mississauga. Authentic Italian food. Simply delicious. StickerU.com, another great website. That's where you go to get your stickers, decals, your temporary tattoos. Thank you, StickerU, for your continued support. Shout out to Canna Cabana. They will not be undersold on cannabis or cannabis accessories. Go to cannacabana.com. Ridley Funeral Home have been pillars of this community since 1921. Check out Brad Jones's excellent podcast, Life's Undertaking, co-hosted by yours truly. And EPRA, they know how to recycle your old tech, your old electronics safely and ethically. I'll have more when Cliff Hacking joins me next month on Toronto Mic'd. Let's get back to Hal. I also did pull working for Slash.
Yep.
Anything you can share about working for Slash?
That's another one that Bruce primarily wrote and put together, and I just did a little bit of background stuff on it. But yeah, that was one of his first tracks that he played for me that got me interested in working with him. And that's all about working for nothing, what the musicians do. They often are asked to do benefits or whatever, and so that's what working for Slash is.
Not about Nash the Slash.
No, not about Nash the Slash.
All right, we're gonna. So what's next for you? Because I do want to hear about, you're in Trailer Park Boys, for goodness sake. So I do want to hear all this. Yeah. But help me out. So after CFNY, and I know you did a few months where you did some weekend stuff and everything. But what was next for Hal Harbour?
Well, eventually, then my wife and I decided to head back east and come back here. And I came back and worked at a couple of commercial radio stations, just weekend stuff. And I started a studio with Stephen Outhit, who had played with the Stunt Chimps, and we both decided to move our families back together, and we started a studio called Deep Nine Recording. But before that, I worked with Terry Pulliam, the guy who did the Sloan recordings, and we set up a studio called Sound Market down in the Goddington Street area of Halifax. So we started that studio. Then I started semi-managing some of the local bands that are working with bands, producing Cool Blue Halo, Bye Skull. The new sub pop scene was happening here in Halifax. They were calling it the new music scene. So we kind of helped bands do live shows and stuff, and had Sound Market. And then Stephen and I eventually set up Deep Nine Recording, where we recorded. Bubbles had his group Sandbox, and we produced their record. And they got signed to a label and all that stuff. Wow. So there was a lot going on. We had a great studio and a rehearsal space, so we had bands in there drinking beer and smashing walls. Every morning we had to come in and clean up all the mess, because there were, bands who tend to need a rehearsal space are the ones that are very loud and like to party. So that was a tough business to be in.
Well, that Sandbox mind blow, because we talked about Much Music briefly there, but they played the mess out of Curious.
Curious, that was the big one, yeah.
Yeah, and of course, the fun fact, of course, is Mike Smith is Bubbles. And
Bubbles, yeah.
Is that how you end up in Trailer Park Boys?
Kind of, yeah. Mike, I actually worked with an artist named Ellen Regan Devine, and we came down to back to Toronto for New Music Week. And I hired Mike and his drummer to be in the band, and I was playing a sampler and she was singing. And I think I got a shot on Trailer Park Boys. I knew Mike Clattenburg, the director and the producer of that show. He was in a band I think called Spawning Grunions or something. Again, he was a 19-year-old kid who used to send me cassettes at Q104. And then he did a comedy show on cable TV, and I was a big fan of that. And so we were friends, and I met him in a club one night, and he said, I got a role for you. I got this thick news guy named Steve Rogers, Channel 10. And I was like, I'm in. And so in the early season, it was just Mike shooting it just wild. He just had a 16mm camera, and it was just like, okay, so you're talking to Bubbles, and Bubbles is it loves cats, and you're going to be doing a documentary on cats. He just would give you the general gist of the shot. And so then every season I tended to get a new role as Steve, or they'd write me in. And I had a great one. I don't know if you saw the one where I was getting married and I had a stag party. Wow. And I met Snoop, did a scene with Snoop Dogg.
Wow.
And some other people like that. It was great.
Shout out to Canna Cabana, if we're talking Snoop Dogg here, created by and for people who love weed. Friendly with a fellow Nova Scotian, Jonathan Torrance?
Yeah, well, Jonathan and Mike shot, they had a collective little company, and we got a loan to do a video for Ellen Regan Devine, and Jonathan was kind of the production manager on the set that day, and Mike shot it. And and I've known him over the years, and doing, we kind of spun off each other here and there. And I don't think I had any direct scenes with his character on Trailer Park Boys, but I know him pretty well when I see him.
I feel like having a character in the Trailer Park Boys universe means you could probably like appear at Comic Cons throughout the continent.
I probably could. And it was so funny because I just flew back to Toronto this summer, and this young guy, I could tell he was looking at me like, "Are you an actor?" I'm like, "Yeah, kinda." "Are you Steve Rogers?" And I was like, "Yeah, it's been 3 years since somebody's done that." You go to a Tim Hortons or a McDonald's, it's like, can I get a selfie? And I hadn't had that for a while, so I was like, "Oh, Steve still lives."
That's great. Love it. Tell me about one of your hobbies, if you will, or pastimes, surfing.
Yeah, well, I mean, I grew up in Kitchener-Waterloo when the Beach Boys broke, and we used to make our own early skateboards. So I was kind of always into that kind of surfing lifestyle or that idea. So when I moved here in 76, somebody said, "Hey, yeah, you can surf out at Lawrencetown." And I went out and bought in those days, you had to buy an old diving wetsuit. It wasn't, the equipment wasn't what it is today. And so there was like 12 guys who lived out there, transplanted South Africans and just the people who decided to move out there and surf. Now there's hundreds and hundreds of people surfing. But yeah, so I've been surfing since 76 or whatever. Wow. And I love it. Yeah, it's just such a great sport, great way to relax and get out on the water. And I don't take on big waves anymore like I did when I was younger, because you can get some big, powerful, humbling waves that'll beat the crap out of you.
Oh, the big kahunas.
The big kahunas, that's right. But yeah, I just love playing in medium-sized surf, and I found a couple spots that are semi-secret. Wow, there's not a lot of people.
Well, we won't dox those spots here, keep them secret. Don't. But I will say, this is to me, when I think of what's like the coolest activity somebody could say they do that I've actually never done, and I think it's so damn cool. It is surfing. Like when I hear I'll hear like, Eddie Vedder's taking a break from Pearl Jam to surf in Hawaii or whatever. I'm thinking like, that guy's got it going on, man. He's surfing.
Yeah, when you watch it, it's such a natural thing. You're kind of you're working with the wave, and the wave is doing something different every time. And the water can be cold or warm. And you're seeing seals out there while you're surfing. And wow. And the joy for me is going south. I'm going to Costa Rica again in November for probably 3 weeks, where you don't have to wear a wetsuit and you can get in the warm water and watch the sunset.
Amazing.
That's the joy. It's kind of tough out here when it's cold, having to slop on all that rubber.
Well, you think it's tough out there? Try it here, man. Once in a while, if we get a windy day, I noticed there are surfers there's a park called Marie Curtis Park, which is in the southwest corner of Toronto, and then it bleeds into Mississauga. And I do see surfers there, but that's your only surfer sighting, at least in my my Toronto experience.
No, it's crazy now. Anywhere where there's water, it doesn't matter if it's Great Lakes or the ocean, people are surfing. Yeah, I hear about more and more sightings all the time in Lake Ontario.
I want to ask you, before we say goodbye, I want to ask you about the CFL, but you mentioned Costa Rica, so I feel like I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you the big question that we're all wondering on Toronto Mike. So I'm a big fan of Chris Shepard's show on CFNY. I used to record that thing to cassette, the overnights, and I love those live to airs from Chris Shepard. Chris Shepard was on Humble and Fred's show in 2014. So let me do some quick math. That's 8 years ago. I've had people, mutual friends, be it Scott Turner, for example, and all these mutual friends. I simply, and I'm fine if the answer is no, I simply want to ask Chris Shepard if he'd come on Toronto Mike and talk about his legacy and everything. But nobody I know can find him. Do you, Hal/Doug, know where Chris Shepard is?
I'm the same as you. I was like, where's Chris? And I think somebody said, I think he's moved to Costa Rica. So that's all I know. And I was like, when I get down there, what am I going to do? I gotta find him or something.
Make it a documentary, like searching for Shepard.
Yeah, searching for Shep. Yeah, waiting for Shep.
Yeah.
So waiting for Godot, waiting for Shep.
But it is remarkable. I feel like I should make a doc because I get 3 different theories floating around. One is that, yes, I've heard this. He's in Costa Rica. But then I've also heard he's in King City, which is much less glamorous than Costa Rica. But he's in King City here in Ontario.
Okay.
And the third one, which I get periodically, is that he's like he's gone like a hermit style, but he's hiding in plain sight here in downtown Toronto, like which would be interesting. But anyway, if you do find Chris Shepard in Costa Rica, let him know Toronto Mike would love to talk to him.
I will do that when I find him.
I find him. Yeah, right. My oldest son was just in Ottawa for the weekend visiting his grandfather, and he went to a Red Blacks game, and we were talking about the CFL, and he's 20, and he's all about the NFL. Like, he simply cares zero for CFL. And here in Toronto, we got the Argos, but they can't get that BMO Field even half filled for the Argos anymore, which is really a sad shame. But what are your thoughts on the CFL and the possibility that the CFL puts a team in Halifax?
I'm kind of the same way. I sort of went, CFL just didn't do it for me anymore. And I suddenly became an NFL watcher. And we just had this thing going on down here where there were some people who wanted to take some public money and build a stadium with a promise of jobs, one of those. And it was, and you knew it was just like, build us a stadium and then we'll make money bringing a CFL team here. So that there was a bunch of us that were a little upset with that notion. It's since kind of fizzled out a little bit. And I don't know whether a CFL team could survive here. It's a good question. CFL seems to be having some tough times right now for sure.
I will say this, that if I think of Regina, for example, that's, well, yeah, I was going to say something that might be misunderstood as rude or something, but when it comes to major league sports, CFL is all they have, and they seem to embrace it and love it, and it could be similar in Halifax. Like, I don't know, it just seems like Halifax doesn't have, the distractions we have in Toronto. NFL and NBA. I mean, did I say NFL? I meant MLB. We do not have NFL. MLB, NBA, NHL. It feels like maybe Halifax would be a smart place for the CFL to go. But you don't want to do it, but use private money. Don't do this with public money.
There's a stadium here at the St. Mary's University that they could expand and pack the place and make it, and it would work. And we do have a history of great college football, St. Mary's and St. FX, and there's some great. So there's no shortage of people who love football here.
Right.
So that could work. It's the principle of taking that, let's give me money and it'll sit there. Stadiums tend to sit there when they're not being used. So it's kind of like you got to have a plan. It's going to work for everybody.
Well said. So Hal, I've loved this. I mean, before we say goodbye, I want to make sure that you've drained the swamp, so to speak. Is there anything you're thinking, I'm on Toronto Mike, that I want to make sure I tell this story or share this, anything at all? As David Marsden would say, play what you want.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I'm gonna be wading through all your great podcast items here, because it sounds like I'm missing out on some good stuff here. It's just great to talk with you, and it brings back a lot for me and all the people that I bounced off of. Pretty lucky to do that, and it's good to talk about it again.
Well, if nothing else, Hal, you've got to listen to episode 1021. It is literally like, I just zoomed with, you name it. Like May Potts is on there, Scott Turner, Alan Cross, David Marsden. A lot of people are on that episode. Danny Elwell's on that thing, so shout out to Danny again. And Humble and Fred are there. All these cats, and we just talk about the history of CFNY for I don't know. We went for 3 hours maybe, but I think you would dig it. Your voice was missing, I realize in retrospect, but when I do a sequel, you're going to be my first call.
Cool. And I will send you some of that rare, fun audio that I have of various tunes and outtakes and such.
Love it. Thanks so much for this, Hal Harbour.
Thank you.
And that brings us to the end of our 1114th show. You can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Toronto Mike. Hal Harbour, a.k.a. Doug Barron, is at Barron D, Barron D on Twitter. Our friends at Great Lakes Brewery are at Great Lakes Beer. Palma Pasta are at Palma Pasta. Sticker U is at Sticker U. Electronic Products Recycling Association are at EPRA_Canada. Ridley Funeral Home are at Ridley FH, and Canna Cabana are at Canna Cabana _ See you all tomorrow, and my special guest is Steve Paikin from TVO.
Everything is coming up, rosy and green. Yeah, the wind is cold, but the smell of snow warms me today. And your smile is fine, and it's just like mine, and it won't go away. 'Cause everything is rosy and green. Well, you've been under my skin for more than 8 years. It's been 8 years of laughter and 8 years of tears. And I don't know what the future can hold or will do for me and you. But I'm a much better man for having known you. Oh, you know that's true, because everything is coming up rosy and green. Yeah, the wind is cold, but the smell of snow warms me today. And your smile is fine, and it's just like mine, and it won't go away. 'Cause everything is rosy and green. Well, I've been told that there's a sucker born every day. But I wonder who. Yeah, I wonder who. Maybe the one who doesn't realize there's 1,000 shades of gray. 'Cause I know that's true, yes I do. I know it's true, yeah. I know it's true. How about you? Oh, they're picking up trash and they're putting down roads. And they're brokering stocks, the class struggle explodes. And I play this guitar just the best that I can.